It seems like the planet's gone mad. What you staring in my face for? I told you fools, I can't save ya. What the frig is with the strange behavior? Seem like the planet gone mad. What you staring in my face for? I told you fools, I can't save ya. What the frig is with the strange behavior? Shout out to everyone in the live chat. We got Golden Dalglish, Flying Eagle, Kira Malcolm, David Fisher, Eustace, Charlene, what's up, Charlene? Julius, I'll be back, says Yo Hatman. You're late, you get the sack, bro. Can't get the sack, because I'm a boss. I'm a boss. But not like Rick Ross, a real boss. Big up MT, Julius, D-Man. Yes, D-Man. What's happening? We got Marek in the place. Big FRG. Beautiful Golden Dragon. That's an interesting name. What's that based on? Shout out to Fernie G. Big up, big up. D-Man says you seem in a good mood. Your Zambian girl treating you good. True, we are the judge of bless. Big things for one. When I rank on bad mind, big things for one. True, we are the judge of bless. Big things for one. When I rank on bad mind, big things for one. Anyone know the artists whose songs have come on singing? Big up Jono, or John Joe, excuse me. Big up AA13, he says, Hatman FC, let's go. Shout out to Wayne Fitness. I've studied the fanboy. Yes, like David Attenborough studies wild animals. That's right. I said that a good few years ago now. I've studied the fanboy. I know the fanboy better than he knows himself. Okay, I'm going to have to put a pause on Paolo the Geek. Don't know where he's trying to go with that comment. Pause there. Shout out to Arco. All good here, bro. AA13 says, Sing Clarks by Vibes Cartel. I don't think I know that song, to be fair. Big up Wayne. Encircled says, Dana is 100% lying. We'll come on to that in a moment, because I've got my own theories, possibilities, and what have you. Big up Atavistic Intellect. Merrick says, Tony versus Peter 1. Was that the fight where James Toney got dropped with a jab? Obviously, Sam Peter was huge compared to James Toney. And Toney weren't really hurt. I think he was off balance. Maybe he got jabbed in the chest or on the shoulder, and he was caught square and went down. Or was that the second fight? They fought twice. Can you guys hear the background music, or is it too low? Shout out to Ruz B, BG, Glum Coyote. He says, Yoga we be. Okay, retracted that message there. You can't hear the background music. Anyone else hear it? Yeah, who next? That's right. That's I think Sam Peter after the rematch is when he did that post-fight interview saying who next. Okay, Encircle can hear it. AA13 says Bam vacated all his titles. Surprised he didn't go for undisputed. Maloney is an easy fight for him. ABG says it's very low. Big FRG says he can hear it. Ruz B can hear it too. Okay, so this is a trivial thing, but it really irritates me. And yes, it's, as I keep saying, trivial. But it really irritates me when these interviewers, and I'm going to mention no names here, keep calling him Bam Bam Rodriguez. His name is Bam Rodriguez. His trainer calls him Bam in interviews. Eddie Hearn, his promoter, calls him Bam. All the American media call him Bam, but somehow the UK boxing media keep calling him Bam Bam. It just irritates the hell out of me for some reason. Yeah, there have been other fighters that are called Bam Bam. But he is not called Bam Bam. He's just Bam. Like, can we just... Anyway, these are guys that work in the industry, so for them to be getting it wrong like that just irritates me. If it was a normal fan, maybe doesn't watch that much boxing media and whatever, I can forgive him. But for guys that actually work in the industry and they keep calling him Bam Bam, just grinds my gears. Again, it's very trivial, but just annoys me. So big up AA13, he called him Bam. See that there? That's a man who's been listening. Glum Coyote says Yoko will be champion of the world. That's a big prediction there, Glum Coyote. That's right, Ben Oldham, Flintstones. Yabba dabba doo, Bam Bam from the Flintstones. LJ says, after watching Hearn's IFL interview, I'd be very surprised if he was the one lying. Personally, I think Dana is out of his depth. Okay. Atavistic Intellect says, Hatman, what do you make of Adrian Broner? I think he's a really tragic guy, to be honest. Guy is drinking himself to death. He also has the weirdest belly ever. Guy looks like a transformer. Well, I've got a slightly different, maybe controversial take on Adrian Broner, because I don't think he's tragic at all. My take on him is that he is somebody that was born to be a crash out and a class clown. And I think he enjoys it. You look all the way through his boxing career, there's never been a time when he's presented himself as a serious person. He's always presented himself as this clown type figure. I mean, the first incarnation of Broner was as a Floyd Mayweather clone. What grown man models his whole boxing style, his whole swag and everything after another active boxer who's operating in and around the same weight classes? Who the hell does that? So when he came on the scene, he came in as a class clown, basically a world star boxer. He was always featuring on World Star Hip Hop, that trashy website. He likes being trashy. He likes courting controversy and all this kind of thing. That's what makes him feel alive. I'm of, if you don't want to call it a view, you could at least call it a suspicion. I'm of the suspicion that some people were put here to be crash outs. They weren't put here for any noble reason. They were put here to be crash outs, and they're loving it. The way I see Adrian Broner, I see him like the black version of Tom Green or Johnny Knoxville. Yeah, that's how I look at Adrian Broner. He's like the black version of Johnny Knoxville or Tom Green. Does anyone feel sorry for Johnny Knoxville or Tom Green or see them as tragic? Maybe some people do. I personally don't. Some people are just born to be idiots. Don't stand in their way. Let them get on with it. They like entertaining us with their idiocy. There are other fighters who seem tragic, you know? There seems to be a lot of pain there, a lot of hurt there. But that's just not the vibe I get from Broner. He just seems like a natural born idiot. He enjoys being an idiot, crashing out and doing all this dumb stuff. And so he's fulfilling his destiny. Big up. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, people are destined to play a certain part in the band. Adrian Broner is playing his instrument. You see AJ saying he would fight Itama. I think you better stay away. Yep, completely agree with the first part there. Well, I agree with both parts. I did see AJ saying he would fight Itama. And AJ has always had very high ambitions. He's always wanted to prove himself to be the best. He's always wanted to be one of those old school champions who takes on all comers. Unfortunately, he wasn't good enough to do that the first time round. And what is he, nearly 37? Can't imagine he's going to be good enough to do it second time around at this age with all the miles on the clock, all the psychological damage, especially against a guy like Itama. So, yeah. I admire AJ's ambition, but the people around him, if they really care about him, and in boxing, there aren't that many people that generally care about boxers in their teams. Everyone's there to make money at the end of the day. But if there is anyone around AJ that cares about him, they need to be steering him away from that fight. Now, obviously, if AJ picks up a title, and look, this is a load of what ifs, because he's got to fight Christian Prenga, then he's got to fight Luke Partridge, aka Tyson Fury. Let's say he comes through those fights and wins. Maybe he ends up with a title. At that stage, you have to, as far as I'm concerned, fight the best available. You have a moral obligation as a champion to take on whoever. This is why I've never sided with the argument that Eddie Hearn was a bad matchmaker when he put AJ in there against Andy Ruiz Jr. Because, again, as a champion, you're supposed to be able to take on all comers. Now, to just contradict myself slightly there, because the fight was at short notice, maybe they could have picked a softer opponent or just pushed the fight date back and still fought Andy Ruiz. But as far as matchmaking a champion, you shouldn't be matchmaking a champion as in avoiding this guy and then taking this guy instead because it's a better style matchup. If you're doing that, you're not a real champion. Anyway, I'm on a side quest here. Big up D-Man. Yeah, I think Itama would be all wrong for Anthony Joshua. Oh, and by the way, folks, Shout out to Chili Beef. By the way, folks, I did go and see the new Steven Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day. I'm going to talk about that later on. Without spoilers, all right? I'll try not to give any spoilers, but we'll talk about that later on in the stream. Okay, that kid says, with the clear concerted effort among promoters to almost unite against Zuffa, I'm surprised that Warren hasn't come out to clarify whether Fury's contract has the same clauses that Eddie is on about. Okay. And Circle says, Broner was never that good, to be honest. Glum Coyote says, yes, he is a native jokester. That's the way I see him. Double A says, a lot of the interviews in the boxing media are terrible, in all honesty. Ask some awful regurgitated questions and don't do enough research. Completely agree. All right, so let's get this party started then. Big up Rich Franklin. Only 14 likes. What have I done wrong? I sung you guys a song and everything. 124 concurrent viewers, only 14 likes. Let's smash that like button. Let's get the likes up to at least, let's say, 55. That's a good number for now. Big up, big up. Okay. So, Eddie Hearn did this interview on IFL TV, calling Dana White a liar, calling him clueless, and saying that he, not Dana White, negotiated the contract or the fight with Tyson Fury for about 6 months. And he said that it specifically says in the contract that the fight must take place in the UK. Dana White has been saying, or at least suggesting, the contrary, that Eddie Hearn didn't negotiate it, that he did instead, and that the fight is somehow going to be in America. Now, the majority of people, including people here in this live chat, and they may turn out to be right, they're saying that Dana White is just lying. And so Kugan Cassius in the Hearn interview was kind of puzzled and dumbfounded as to why Dana White would lie. Dana White himself, when he was questioned by a member of the boxing media, threw the question back at the guy and said, do you really think I would sit here and lie and look like an idiot down the line when I'm not the one promoting the fight? And the guy said, I don't know. Well, here's my take. Yes, Eddie Hearn was adamant that the contract says Zuffa and Dana White cannot be involved in the fight. Yes, he is adamant that the fight must take place in the UK, and that's in the contract. But there's one thing that people seem to have missed, and he repeated it several times, so I'm not sure why they missed it. And that is that if Turki Al-Sheikh wants to renegotiate the contract, then okay. Now, if Turki Al-Sheikh can, on a whim, tell the guys that he wants to renegotiate the contract, then that means the contract isn't worth the paper it's printed on. So, if that is the position, and at the end of the day, Turki Al-Sheikh, via the Saudis, the Public Investment Fund, or whatever the body is called within the Saudi government, at the end of the day, they're putting up the money. And if they want to renegotiate the contract, and Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren says, no, we don't want to renegotiate the contract, they just pull their money out of the situation. Make up some excuse for it or whatever. Just withdraw the funds. That may well be possible. And if it is possible, then like I say, the contract that Eddie Hearn has negotiated isn't worth the paper it's printed on. And maybe that is why there's this confusion as far as what Dana White is saying, or this contradiction as far as what Dana White is saying compared to what Eddie Hearn's saying. Maybe neither of them are lying. Or maybe both of them aligned, depending on which way you want to look at it. Maybe Dana White has been involved in some type of negotiations, let's say parallel negotiations, with Turki Al-Sheikh, maybe with a boxing venue in the United States. We could do it in the States. We could put it on this particular broadcast. We could do it this way. At the end of the day, Turki Al-Sheikh is operating like some kind of Svengali figure in boxing, almost playing different sides off against each other. Because Eddie Hearn in this interview said that Dana White has now received a legal letter from DAZN, a cease and desist, because of his behavior towards certain fighters, trying to tap certain fighters up to sign with him who are under contract. And so DAZN have sent him a cease and desist, according to Eddie Hearn. Well, hang on. Dana White is basically operating under the control, or at least the influence, of Turki Al-Sheikh. And Turki Al-Sheikh also owns a minority stake in DAZN. So again, it's like he's playing all the different sides off against each other, seeing who manages to do a better job. And then maybe he'll say, okay, I'll go with you, because you managed to fend off the other guys. Eddie Hearn keeps saying that Turki Al-Sheikh loves the, I'm not going to say the word, but effery. Let's call it effery. Loves it. He loves seeing these guys all bump heads and fight with each other and slag each other off in the press. He loves the WWE aspect of it. And people have asked me before whether I think that a lot of this is staged, the beef between Eddie Hearn and Dana White. And it might be. If not completely staged, then perhaps exaggerated for public consumption. Because drama sells, beef sells. Nick Khan is part of this equation, and Nick Khan is the head honcho at the WWE right now. So maybe they're bringing some of those WWE scripts to boxing as far as the outside the ring drama. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on what's possibly going on here. Eddie Hearn may have all the things in the contract that he says. I suspect he does. But if Turki Al-Sheikh can just say, we're going to renegotiate the contract, and Eddie Hearn indicated that that is the case, if Turki Al-Sheikh can just do that on a whim, then the contract ain't worth anything. What do you guys think? Dylan Collins says, Eddie calling Dana Maris Piper is hilarious. He's got a few names now, hasn't he? Maris Piper, Uncle Fester. That's what De La Hoya calls him. Thank you to Glum Coyote for the super chat. He says, there are a lot of similarities stylistically between Bivol and Atama. In and out bouncing feet, fast hands, combinations. Okay, that's an interesting comparison. I would say that one of the differences, there are a lot of similarities, yes, I agree. One of the differences, though, is that Atama throws a lot more hooks than Bivol. Bivol is almost exclusively straight punches. He does throw hooks sometimes, but very rarely. It's usually straight shots, almost like a karate person, right? In karate, they throw straight punches. They don't really hook. And Bivol's a bit like that. He doesn't throw many hooks. It's all straight shots. He also doesn't move his upper body that much, Bivol. He doesn't really duck underneath punches. Atama does. And Atama likes the hooks and uppercuts. Does Bivol even throw uppercuts? Again, I think it's a relatively rare thing. Whereas Atama likes to throw uppercuts, hooks, and the straight shots. Also, obviously Atama's a heavyweight. He's much bigger than Bivol. But for his weight class, Atama is a much bigger puncher than Bivol. Bivol's really not a puncher. Milikuziev. Maybe it's Bektamir Milikuziev. Something like that. He had that one loss to Gabe Rosado some years ago, which he avenged. Bektamir Milikuziev. And Milikuziev's style is somewhat similar to Atama's style. Again, the in and out movement, but Milikuziev does throw more hooks. And he used to be a wicked body puncher, Milikuziev. I'm not sure whether he still goes to the body as much as he used to. Maybe he's a little more careful now about going to the body because he did suffer that terrible knockout defeat to Gabe Rosado years ago, as I said. But shout out to Glum Coyote for the super chat. Thank you for your observations. Ruz B says Bivol would outpoint you in a street fight. Arco says the stream is cutting up a little. Yeah, let me see if I can switch the internet connection, because the Starlink is a bit iffy at the moment. So let me try and switch to my mobile connection, which sometimes is very fast. Give me a sec, folks. Yeah, that's apparently not an option right now. My mobile connection is diabolically slow. Not sure what's going on with that. So we'll have to just struggle through with the Starlink. Hopefully it's okay enough. So yeah, that's my take on Eddie Hearn, Dana White. They might both be telling the truth. It's possible that Dana White is lying, more than possible, but it's possible they're both telling the truth on some level. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, what do you think of Terence Crawford saying his hardest fights were Mean Machine and Madrimov, both Soviet style? Well, previously he'd said that Ricky Burns was his hardest fight, or did he say that Ricky Burns was the toughest UK fight he'd had, as in against a UK fighter? Mean Machine and Madrimov, both Soviet style. I mean, Madrimov more of the classic Soviet style. Mean Machine, not so much. What do I think of it? I actually thought that Madrimov beat Crawford by maybe a round. It was a close fight, though. I've got no issue with it going the other way. But on my scorecard, I think I had Madrimov a round up. Styles make fights. A lot of these American fighters are not used to taking on these Soviet styles. Maybe they faced them way back in the amateurs, but even then, unless they were in the Olympics, they may not have faced them that often. And Terence Crawford wasn't in the Olympics. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he had issues with those guys as opposed to with American fighters, because, and even Mexican fighters, because he's just used to those kind of styles. Madrimov in particular has certain techniques and tricks that American and Mexican fighters don't tend to use. John Fury. Do you see John Fury at a press conference for Tommy Fury versus Eddie Hall? He now looks like Uncle Albert from Only Fools and Horses with that beard. Like a version of Uncle Albert who's piled on some pounds. Andrew says, really looking forward to your thoughts on Disclosure Day. I'll share mine later too. Glum Coyote says, yes, you are right about Bivol being less diversified and versatile in his boxing. There's a good comparison as well. Chris Lee says, John Fury looks like Captain Birdseye. Yes, indeed. Captain Birdseye, Uncle Albert, or even Captain Sham from A Series of Unfortunate Events. Omar says Jimmy Partridge, a.k.a. John Fury, needs to stay in hiding. I second that. Somebody the other day said John Fury fatigue is real. And it absolutely is. I think most of us at this stage have got John Fury fatigue. Are any of you guys planning to watch this fight? The Tommy Fury, Eddie Hall matchup, which takes place tomorrow. There was some ruckus at the presser yesterday, or was it the day before, where a guy who was supposed to be on the undercard, maybe it's chief support against Arms Corleone, got punched in the mouth by somebody else. Not the guy who was supposed to fight Arms Corleone, somebody else. Punched him in the mouth, left him with a cut lip, and therefore he had to pull out. But the main event is Tommy Fury versus Eddie Hall. Anyone interested in this? Chris Lee says, yeah, I'm interested in the undercard. AJ says, Uncle Albert and Captain Birdseye both beat John. All right. Shout out to WPW. Fernie G says, for now, I'll say Disclosure Day is not what I expected. AA13 says, no interest in the fight too. Pantomime. Matt says, do you think Turkey could be pulling the wool over Dana's eyes? I think it's possible he could be pulling the wool over either guy's eyes, over Eddie Hearn's eyes or Dana's eyes. Or maybe both. Turkey looks like a guy that is having an absolute ton of fun doing what he's doing. And because he's the guy in charge of the money, all these guys just have to grin and bear it. What else are they going to do? They have to grin and bear it. And oh yeah, one thing I have to say though, is that it was pretty damn shameless of Coogan during that interview to stir the pot the way that he did. And I'm not being funny, but Coogan basically was at least partly responsible for that undercard fight being pulled. For that guy pulling out who was supposed to fight Arms Corleone. Yeah, because of that stirring that he did. Calling the guy over to, I mean, dear oh dear. Free Coffee Guy says, Eddie almost ran me off the road once. Doing at least 30 and a 10 and ignoring giveaway signs on a local industrial estate. Okay. Okay, AJ Ganzoy, I'm not sure who he's talking about there. Some guy from Manchester has no top lip. He's a fake guy. I saw a video of a McDonald's bouncer knock his teeth out and he ran into a taxi and fled for his life. Google Jordan McCann gets teeth. Okay, so he's talking about Jordan McCann. He's the guy that punched. What's the name of the guy he punched in the mouth? That Jordan McCann punched? Big Stacks, okay. AJ is saying Jordan McCann got his teeth knocked out. I'd have to watch the video back of him punching Big Stacks, but it seemed like a bit of a sucker punch. Chili Beef says, that fight is still going ahead, I thought. Unless they've changed things now. Last I checked, Big Stacks has pulled out. And Arms Corleone was having a go at him for pulling out. WPW says, if you go around calling yourself the hardest guy in the UK, you're going to get tested. Yeah, but that's just for views. I don't think he really believes that. He's just saying that. I mean, have you seen him on the pads? He's diabolically bad. Nobody who's that bad on the pads throwing punches could possibly believe that they're the hardest man in the UK. So that's just like content for views and all that kind of business. Sam says, this guy's a big UK rapper and cheap shotting. Who's the big UK rapper? Jordan McCann? Surely not. Okay, AJ says if you type Jordan McCann, the first thing that comes up is the McDonald's fight. Okay. Matt Duke says, I read yesterday that Tank Davis has left America due to this arrest warrant on him. Not sure if it's true or not. Where's he gone to? Bali? Because Russell Simmons, I'm not sure how many of you guys know who Russell Simmons is. He's the older brother of Run DMC. And a few years ago, there were some accusations that came out about him. You know, like Me Too type accusations. And amidst all that, he left the United States and he's been living in Bali ever since, running yoga retreats. Because apparently Bali do not have any extradition treaty with the United States. So if you're an American citizen wanted in your home country and you flee to Bali, the Bali government, I guess it's the Indonesian government, right? Is Bali semi-autonomous? Or is it just fully under the Indonesian government's control? I'm not sure. But anyway, they don't have any extradition there for American citizens. So as much as the American government might want you, they can't get you. I mean, I'm sure if they wanted you bad enough, they would find a way to get you back. But maybe with Russell Simmons, it's not serious enough for them to go that far. Is that where Tank Davis has gone? Has he fled to Bali? I know there are many other places that don't have an extradition treaty with the United States as well. It's not only Bali, but Bali's one of the places. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, Cuban, Mexican, Soviet, UK, or American style, what's your favorite? The thing is, I guess by American style, you're going to say like Black American style. The thing, and also styles change over time, you know? Because what is seen as like the generic Black American style today is quite different to what the Black American style was in the 80s and in the 90s and in the 70s and 60s. So back in, for example, the 80s and the 70s, so many guys were trying to fight like Muhammad Ali, particularly in the 80s. There was a load of Ali clones. But then Mike Tyson came along, and you had all the sluggers and Holyfield, the boxer puncher. But simultaneously, or concurrent to that, you also had Pernell Whitaker in the lower weight classes. You had Meldrick Taylor, who was not really a slickster, a boxer, yes, but fast hands, combination puncher. I mean, just stylistically, I always liked Mike Tyson, Tommy Hearns, and Roy Jones, and all three of them have got totally different styles. So it's a really hard question to answer, but I would say American, because there are so many different styles over the decades. And most of my favorite fighters to watch have been Americans. So I'll go with American. Big up D-Man for the super chat. Much appreciated. How about you, though? Of those styles you mentioned, which one would be your favorite? Kieran Malcolm says, Russell Simmons went back to the US for Kim Porter's funeral. Is that right? And they didn't nab him? Okay. Maybe he had been given certain assurances. Or maybe the smoke had cleared by then. Maybe it had blown over. Andrew says the advisor Mayweather is trying to sue has leaked messages of him flawed pawning off his jewelry and begging for financial advice. Well, yeah, that's what I'd heard about the guy, that he was selling Mayweather's jewelry without Mayweather knowing. Is that the allegation? Correct me if I'm wrong. D-Man says, I'd say Kronk because I like the KO. Guess that's an American style too. Well, yeah, that's why I put Tommy Hearns up there as one of my favorite fighters to watch. That's the Kronk style right there. 100%. Big up GMS Nightmare. He says, is Moses the most talented heavyweight in UK boxing history? That's a good question. To answer that question, we really have to define what talent is. Lennox Lewis was very talented, but his talent was different to Atama's talent. He was good at different things. I would say at the stage of the career that Atama is at, he looks like the most polished British heavyweight in history. But he hasn't had the acid test yet. We don't know how that polished technique, the fast hands, the power, the moves, the head movement, we don't know how that will hold up against a top tier fighter. So if he's not the most talented UK heavyweight in history, as far as just, you know, athleticism and balance and all this kind of stuff, the combination of power and speed, if he's not, then he's got to be at least number 2 or number 3. I'm going to say maybe number 2 if he's not. So that's the way I'd answer the question. Big up GMS Nightmare for the super chat. What do you think? Do you think he's the most talented UK heavyweight in UK boxing history? Shout out to Gaz for the super chat. He says, Halo's coming to PS5. Looking forward to that, mate. Question mark. No, I've never been a fan of Halo. I did play a couple of the Halo games. I had an Xbox 360 back in the days. Never was a fan of Halo. Never liked the aesthetic, never liked the way the game played. Just wasn't for me. And actually, I was more of a fan of Destiny 2. And Destiny 2 obviously was made by Bungie. And it was almost like a spiritual successor to Halo. But they tweaked certain things in Destiny, which for me made it more enjoyable to play than Halo. So, as far as Halo coming to PS5, nope. Not particularly interested in that. If I'm going to check out a new game, it'll probably be this James Bond game that people are talking about at a minute. Shout out to Railway Unboxing fan. Till this day says Prince Nassim was pretty talented athletically. Well, very talented athletically, but the question was regarding heavyweights. Atam was certainly not the most talented UK fighter of any weight, no. But in terms of heavyweights, he's in the conversation. Did I like God of War? My favorite God of War is God of War 3. God of War 2018 was pretty good, but I still prefer God of War 3. I actually prefer the old... How do you even describe it? But the old traditional third-person camera God of War, which is what the first few God of Wars were like, including God of War Ascension. Well, most of the God of Wars. Then they switched it from God of War 2018 and then followed up with God of War Ragnarok to the over-the-shoulder camera perspective, which is okay, but I still prefer the old version, the old camera in God of War. Avenues Roofing says, Shakur apparently turned down the Haney fight at 144, even asking for the catch weight. Is that right? Encircled says, I think he's more athletic than Lewis and more coordinated. I wouldn't argue with you, but if you go watch Lennox Lewis when he fought Razor Ruddock, for example, he was very, very athletic, very sharp, very coordinated, and so on. I think the heavier Lennox Lewis got, the less coordinated he was and the more sloppy he looked. Because you have to remember that when he fought Razor Ruddock, he weighed in the 220s. Off the top of my head, you guys could go check this on BoxRec. I think against Razor Ruddock, he was 227 pounds, which is 16 stone 3 in English money. Yeah, I want to say Lewis was 227, which is 16.3. And at that weight, he was able to coordinate his limbs much better than later on in his career. Not like he was poorly coordinated later on in his career, but he could look a bit sloppy at times, especially when he got tired. When those big, heavy arms got tired, it could, look a bit sloppy. But in that Razor Ruddock fight, he was very, very impressive. Very sharp punches. Movement was there, coordination was there, bending at the waist, jabbing up and down. It's a short fight. It's only 2 rounds, less than 2 rounds. But his athleticism really stood out to you in that fight. But the heavier he got, his muscles got heavier and, just put on more bulk. The athleticism wasn't quite the same. This is why I always say Lennox Lewis reached his athletic prime in his late 20s, but he didn't reach his technical and mental prime until his early 30s. So there are 2 different primes there. Ideally, you want those primes to happen at the same time. You want your athletic prime and technical/mental prime In fact, we can call them 3 different primes: mental prime, technical prime, athletic prime. You want all 3 of those primes to happen at the same time. But that isn't always the case. Shout out to GMS Nightmare. He says, who would have won the Hay Partridge fight? Yeah, people often ask me this. It's really difficult to say because we don't know exactly. In fact, let me just cut through it all. I'm going to say Partridge. Maybe I'll be completely wrong. Who knows? We don't have a time machine to stop David Haye getting cut and whatever and have the fight go ahead. So I'm going to say Partridge, but I got no issue if anyone disagrees. Big up D-Man for the super chat. It says, I think one of the most underrated games was actually Black Hawk Down on PS2. It was so good for its time. Never actually played that. I know the Black Hawk Down movie. Never played the game. Big up AA 13. He says, I think Hrgovic is being managed poorly if his team have put him in with a Tama. He should have got the Gassiev fight. Thought he was deserving. Would have become a mandatory. Yoka prioritized over him. Yeah, well, if you saw the interviews that Hrgovic did after the Dave Allen fight, he was asked about that. He was kind of quizzed about why would you take on a Tama? What's in it for you? And he basically said, when you're a fighter from Croatia, you don't really have any leverage. That's basically what he said. If you're a Croatian fighter, you don't really have any leverage. So you get the short end of the stick wherever you go, wherever promoter you're with. They're going to prioritize other guys over you. That's pretty much the way he described it. Big up AA 13 for the super chat. And yeah, it does seem a strange one, doesn't it? Taking on Moses Atalma. But he said that that was one of the fights that he's kind of contracted to take when he did that re-signing or contract extension with Queensbury. I'm not exactly sure how it works. Does he have to fight Atalma within a certain time span? Does he have to fight him next? Does he have to fight Atalma before he can be released from his contract? I'm not sure exactly how it works. But you could say it's poor management. Hrgovic is in his early 30s now. Maybe coming up to his mid-30s. And perhaps his management team have done the best that they could do for him, you know? Maybe what he's saying is true. Maybe he just doesn't have the leverage to get a better deal. Who knows? None of us are privy to what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, one thing I will say is Hrgovic, for the most part, has been relatively active over the past few years. And that's the main thing that you want. But as far as not getting a title shot, again, Warren's got all the heavyweights. And if anyone's getting a title shot, he's going to push Atalma for it against the likes of a Gassiev rather than a Hrgovic. So what can you possibly do to put yourself in the position rather than Atalma? If you sign with Hearn, and I'm, saying if it was Hrgovic, if he re-signed with Hearn, because he used to be signed with Hearn a few years ago, would it make any difference? Would Hearn be able to get him that shot? I don't know. But big up AA 13 for the super chat, much appreciated. Yeah, I've seen that, Omar. They've got Kratos' wife now in the next God of War. Shout out to Copezilla. He says, Fury had a 6-pack for the Hay fight. Did you go cinema? Yes, I did. Indeed, Fury had a 6-pack for the Hay fight. Did anyone else play Black Hawk Down on PS2? Because D-Man's saying it was a very good game for its time. And they actually got some inspiration from Black Hawk Down for Call of Duty COD 4, Modern Warfare. There were certain parts of the campaign, and even one of the multiplayer maps is inspired by Black Hawk Down. You know, the one with the downed helicopter in the middle of the map? That's inspired by Black Hawk Down. So there was a lot of inspiration for movies in COD 4 Modern Warfare. And I can see how a video game of Black Hawk Down could be fun to play, because for those of you who don't know, the movie Black Hawk Down was based on real events. It was a situation where the American military had a Black Hawk helicopter flying over Mogadishu in Somalia. And it was shot down by local warlords or whatever. And the occupants of the helicopter were taken hostage by the Somalis. They were dragged from the helicopter, taken hostage. And so when this happened, other American troops were sent in to rescue these guys. I don't know how Mogadishu is now, but certainly back then, it was absolutely awash with guns. I'm talking about kids with AK-47s, men, and even women. Women in burqas, I kid you not. The American troops said that when they were having to fight their way into they literally had to fight their way into Mogadishu and then fight their way out. And it says in the process of doing this, random people who you thought were just like street traders and stuff like that would pull out AK-47s and start opening fire on them. Women in burqas. Some random kid would all of a sudden pull out an RPG. It was that crazy. And so that is what they based the movie on. And I could see how that scenario could make an interesting video game. Big up Cobzilla for the super chat. He says, if you saw Disclosure Day, it reminded me of the X-Files. I'm going to come onto it in a second. Big up Glum Coyote. He says, do you think Russia is a potential ambush for Yoka? Well, it's always a potential ambush when you're fighting in the other guy's backyard. So it's always a potential ambush. But Yoka is certainly a better boxer than Murat Gassiev. He's bigger, naturally bigger, taller, longer arms, got a better jab. He's more experienced. Gassiev only had about 20 amateur fights. He's one of these rare Eastern European, specifically Russian fighters that didn't have much of an amateur career. So Tony Yoka's got all the pedigree, the size, the boxing ability, the reach, everything. All Gassiev really has is the power, but then he's got the judges, the referee, and all that kind of thing. Let me just put it this way. If this fight was in France, I think I'd pick Tony Yoka to win. But given the fact it's in Russia, I'm not so confident. I know you're picking Yoka to win. You think he's going to be champion. But I don't know, man. Gassiev picked this fight for a reason, right? Incidentally, what does everyone else think? How many of you guys are picking Gassiev and how many of you are picking Yoka in that fight? Let's get a show of hands. Yoka or Gassiev? Double A13 says, I'm Somalian. Are you sure you're Somalian? Because if you really were from Somalia, you wouldn't call yourself Somalian. You call yourself Somali. Somalis hate being called Somalian, by the way. For those of you who don't know. They get upset. They say, I hate when people call me Somalian. I'm Somali. Shout out to Double A13. And for those who don't know, Black Hawk Down, of course, is a movie about a situation that happened in Somalia. And Captain Phillips is about Somali pirates. AA13 says Yoka might get done on the cards, to be honest. He definitely outboxes him. Yeah, I think so. Gassiev really can't box. I mean, he outboxed one guy and stopped him. That was Unil Dorticus at cruiserweight. I was so surprised that he outboxed him because I'd never seen him actually box anyone before, but he managed it then. But that aside, he's not a really good boxer. Fernie G says, I think the 2-year ban of Muhammad Ali kept us from seeing his 3 simultaneous primes. I suspect you're right. The athletic prime, the technical prime, and the mental prime. Yep. I would agree with that. Shout out to Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, Eddie Hall versus Tommy Fury should pay me just to watch it. It's such an absolute clown show of a matchup that I can't imagine enjoying it at all. I'm a snob. The problem, the biggest issue I have with this fight is the fact that these guys are friendly with each other. Going back several years, they were all pally, eating with each other, doing I think the video I saw, or video series I saw, was Diet Swap, where they swapped diets for like a week or something. They might have swapped training regimes as well for a week, and they were in an ice bath together and all this pally stuff, and now they're fighting? That's what concerns me. Big up D-Man, he says, the PR disaster in Somalia when elite US force got embarrassed was apparently a big reason for them not intervening in Rwanda. I mean, I'm not so sure about that because when the West intervenes in these things, it's when they have a vested interest in the country. If they don't have a particular interest in the country, then they won't intervene. They always dress it up like it's a humanitarian thing. Oh, we're stepping in because it's the right thing to do, when that almost never happens. They step in if they've got some kind of stake in that country or stake in the government of the country. If they don't have a stake, if they're hostile to the government of that country, they might be the ones funding a coup or a revolution or whatever the case may be, a civil war. So I'm not sure about that, but because also Rwanda, I'm not sure how many it's going back a long time now when there was the Rwanda genocide and the war in Rwanda. But my perception anyway, I could be wrong, but my perception is that Somalia was just way more filled with guns than Rwanda ever was. In Somalia, they just had guns on top of guns on top of guns. And everyone was armed. Kids, women, men, everyone had guns. I had a Somali friend back in the days who told me about a market in Mogadishu where you could literally buy anything. You could buy, RPGs, all kind of different guns, AKs and machine guns and pistols and everything. Just out in the open at a market in Mogadishu. Shout out to Matt Borges, he says, tell me you wouldn't watch this Wheels versus Hall. You know what? I would watch it. Because that Larry Wheels guy is so odd. I know you say he's not acting and that it's the United States and people like that really exist over there, but it still amazes me that somebody could be that stupid and dim-witted as Larry Wheels appears to be. Again, I'm open to the possibility that he's acting and that he and his wife are just doing all that stuff for content. Kind of like Adam 22 and his wife, because apparently Adam 22 and his wife are not actually getting divorced. That was either something that people on the internet made up or something that Adam 22 and his wife made up just for clicks. Matt Borgerson says Larry Wheels versus Eddie Hall is a good matchup. Okay. Double A13 says, I'm one of the ones who aren't fussed about Somali or Somali and it's trivial. Okay, fair enough. What is the most popular male name in Somalia? I'm going to guess that it's Muhammad, but number 2 has got to be Abdi. The amount of Somalis that are called Abdi is just crazy. And Abdi, I think, is a uniquely Somalian name, isn't it? It's not a name that I'm aware of existing in the Arabic world. Is it a variation of the name Abid? Because the Somali language, Cushitic, is in the same language family as Arabic. And it sounds somewhat like a form of Arabic. So some of the words that they have may have the same root as the Arabic version of the word. Some of the names and what have you. But yeah, Abdi is like, Abdi Fox indeed. Abdi is such a ubiquitous name for Somalis. Okay, yeah, Double A13 says, definitely Abdi. There are so many variations of the name Abdi. Okay, Double A13 says, mine is Abdi Rahman. I see, so Abdi is just the start of the name. Oh, now it makes sense. So it's kind of like with Nigerians who are called Ade, because Ade is just the start of the name. Some people might not realize that. The full name will usually be something like Adebola. Yeah, Ade is just the start of it. The first 3 letters of the name. Adebola. Yeah, some people were reacting to John Fury's latest, I think it's IFL interview or maybe Stomping Ground interview, where in the interview, he's saying, I don't need money. I'm not here for money. I don't need money. And then in the next breath, when it comes to fighting Carl Froch, you're saying they need to get a checkbook out and pay me loads of money. These people have such a lack of self-awareness. It's incredible, isn't it? Double A13 says, yeah, Abdi is the start. It means slave. Okay, so it's like a bead in Arabic. And for those wondering, like, who the hell would be called slave? It's meant to be slave of God, as I understand it. AJ says, I know about 30 Somalis. 29 are called Abdi. And one is called Mukhtar. No joke. Double A13 says, Guled is very popular too. All right. Yeah, they have some unique names in Somalia, as they do in other parts of the Horn of Africa, like in Ethiopia, they have their own names, which you won't really find anywhere else outside of Ethiopia and Eritrea. And in fact, let me say something about Turkey Al Sheikh for a second regarding this Anthony Joshua Tyson Fury fight. So there's a lot of people that are concerned about the AJ Fury fight taking place outside of the United Kingdom, be it in America or in Saudi Arabia. And people are saying this would be an insult to British boxing fans. I saw somebody actually saying that it would be the equivalent of Conor Benn stabbing Eddie Hearn in the back. That the Saudis will be stabbing British boxing fans in the back, and the promoters will be stabbing British boxing fans in the back if they put it on outside the UK. Here's why I disagree. The Saudis are the ones putting the money up. If they're putting the money up, then you can't really complain about where they want to put the fight on. Because the model that they're using is not the traditional pay-per-view model. The traditional pay-per-view model relies on fans buying pay-per-view in order to generate revenue. The Saudis aren't doing it that way. They're putting the fight on Netflix, and the amount that the fighters are getting, the purses, are not based on pay-per-view. They are literally paying the purses up front. See, normally in a pay-per-view, the fighters will get a baseline purse, and then they'll get a percentage of the pay-per-view revenue on top. So they won't know exactly what they're going to... They'll project the numbers, right? Before the pay-per-view, they think it's going to sell a certain amount, and so they'll project what they think the final purse is going to be, but they don't know for sure until the numbers have come in. So with that traditional pay-per-view model, yeah, the fans maybe deserve a bit more consideration as far as where fights are going to take place, because they are paying the fighters' purses. But in this instance, the fans actually are not paying the fighters' purses. The Saudis are putting the money up front. And if they're willing to do that, okay, we want the fight to be in the UK for the historic purposes and for the people that want to go to watch the fight. I completely get it. But the people to blame if it isn't in the UK are not the Saudis. Yeah, they're going to do what they feel is best for their agenda. Whether it's for promoting their country and changing the image of the country, whatever the case may be. They're going to do what's best for them, and they have every right to do that because they're putting the money up. The people that need to be blamed for the fight not taking place in the UK are Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren and Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, because they could have got the fight done before the Saudis came on the scene. And if they got it done before the Saudis came on the scene, it would have been in the UK. Certainly. Their inability to get it done is what has now led to this situation where potentially the fight might happen abroad. So that's the way I see it. Big up Matt Borgerson for the Super Chasers. Saudi is just inflating the market for Zuffa stock. Okay, Atavistic Intellect says, Hatman, when are you moving to Haiti? It's one of the safest and most relaxing countries in the world. Safer than the UAE. So peaceful. I sent some serious sarcasm there. The Place Boxing says, yeah, because of their dialect, it's Abdi. It's just like Abdul Rahman. Okay. Big up the Place Boxing. All right, so let's get on to, in fact, before we get on to this movie review that I'm going to do for Disclosure Day, I want to alert you guys to a campaign which I'm part of, the War on Weave. Oh yeah, we've had enough. It's the straw has broken the camel's back. We are declaring war on weave. Oh, we declare war. No more. And not only are we declaring war on weave, these hair hats, wigs, and all this other stuff. We're declaring war on the guys who enable this stuff. The guys who give their wives and girlfriends money, maybe even their daughters money, to go buy this garbage. Give them an allowance to go and get their weave on. No, we're declaring war on you too. All right? Hashtag the war on weave. It's starting to pick up traction now on the socials. War on weave. We're not having it anymore. Natural all the way. Weave has got to stop. It looks ridiculous. It stinks. How are you going to sew someone else's hair on your head, which doesn't look anything like the hair that grows from your own head? Keep it on there for weeks. Your scalp and your real hair underneath doesn't see a drop of water. It stinks. It's nasty. It looks ridiculous because your real hair don't grow like that. Stop it. All right? The war on weave is on and it's popping. And there's a young man on Indeed, bunch of self-haters, and the delusional nonsense that people come out with to try and justify weave is just bizarre. It is bizarre. Talking about, oh no, it's just because we like to switch up the styles. Isn't it funny that the styles you all like to switch up to look nothing like the hair that grows out of your head? Oh no, but other races of women do it too. Oh really? So do you ever see a bunch of Indian women and white women walking down the street wearing afro weaves? No, you never see that. Stop the cap. Stop it. All right? We're not having it anymore. And all you jokers out there, you weirdo man, and I've seen some of them who actually prefer weave over natural hair. Oh, we're coming for you too. It's on like Donkey Kong. The war on weave. Let me get that young man's Instagram page up. No, there's no preferring weave. We're coming for you then, bro. That's it, little J. We're coming for you too, bro. No, there's no preferring weave. I would take a bald chick over a chick with a weave. Nope. If I ever had daughters, I don't want to see daughters looking at the mother being ashamed of her own natural hair and then emulating that. No, we're not doing it. We are not doing it. It's nasty. It stinks. It feels horrible. On top of that, go just type in weave health effects to YouTube. There's a number of news reports recently that came out in America, studies that have been done that show that these weaves are full of toxic chemicals. And you know, the head, the scalp has an enormous number of capillaries and blood vessels and what have you, and they've shown that the chemicals in these weaves and wigs and the glue and all that kind of stuff is seeping into the bloodstream through the scalp and actually disrupting the hormones. Nah, bro, we're not doing this. Oh, way more than just cancer. It's my suspicion that it actually affects behavior too. Yeah, there is the carcinogenic element of it and hormone disruption. It's my suspicion it also negatively affects behavior. These damn weaves have got to go. Seriously. The war on weave is up and it's stuck, and yes, it's repulsive. It's embarrassing. Seriously, the whole weave thing is embarrassing. Flipping embarrassing. It's the only group of women that don't regularly, normally, the majority of the time, wear their own natural hair. Every other group of women does. But our women, oh no, they don't want to do that. They've got this bizarre inferiority complex about their hair, and they just gaslight and come up with all kind of crazy excuses and warped, twisted logic, and just unbelievable. So no, we're coming from, and we're coming from we're coming for the weaves too. And the guy who fund the weaves, you know, the weave allowance. No, we're coming for them too. Anyway, big up Glum Coyote. He says, Turkey always looks like a locum. Okay, I'm not sure what that word is. Lucum? Oozing in the sun. You cannot call your excellency a lucum, dissolving and melting away in the sun, hence the shades, by the way. Well, the shades are an Arab thing. A lot of Arabs love to wear shades like that, kind of like Nigerians. You know, you see a lot of these Nigerians, and they just wear shades everywhere. It's like a West African look. You know, in Nigeria, Ghana, these guys just love wearing shades in all situations, day and night. So I put Lucum into the search engine. It says it's Turkish Delight. Okay, one of those sweets. So is that the actual Turkish name for it? I didn't know the Turkish name for it. Thank you, Glum Coyote. He's always teaching me new words, Glum Coyote. He's got a tremendous vocabulary. Yeah, and getting back to the weave for a second, it's like when you tell them that you like natural hair, they always say, oh, but guys always approach me when I've got a weave on, though. So most guys obviously like weave. They ignore you. But then when there's a load of guys saying, no, we like natural hair, we don't like weave, then they turn around and say, well, you can't tell us what to do. You see how that works? You see how the goalposts are move? Unbelievable. Oh, it's a Turkish pastry. Okay, so it's not Turkish Delight, the sweet, it's a pastry. Anyway, let's move on from the war on weave, hashtag. Actually, no. Before we do that, where's that young man's Instagram account? Can we get to that? I do want to just shout him out because there's a young black American guy who is going 10 toes down on his Instagram page with the war on weave, hashtag war on weave. He's a young black American guy who is doing God's work. He's going around in the streets. He's interviewing these women face to face, and he's exposing and pushing back against the madness. And I want to acknowledge this young man. He's a soldier of God. He's doing God's work. Let me try to find his page here. Yeah, here we go. So the Instagram page is called Stop Playing Trey. And his actual name is Trayvon McNair. All right, Trayvon McNair is his name. The Instagram page is called Stop Playing Trey. Currently 63,000 followers on Instagram and gaining followers at a very fast rate. Hashtag the war on weave. All right, check out Stop Playing Trey. Trayvon McNair on Instagram. Stop Playing Trey. Check him out. He's doing the Lord's work. Dr. Wu says Tommy Sotomayor started this off. Well, no, he didn't start it off. Many of us, I was talking about how much I hate weave back in 2017 at least. Maybe earlier than that when I was still doing Topical Tuesday. No, it was way earlier than 2017. When I was doing Topical Tuesdays, 2015 maybe, I was talking about how much I hate it. In terms of the big creators, maybe he was the guy that became most known for it, Tommy Sotomayor. But so many of us have hated this stuff for decades, man. It's just nasty. You know, back in the 90s, weaves that these women and girls would wear didn't look that much different than their own relaxed hair. But now the weaves have just got completely out of control. They look totally ridiculous. And also the weaves back then weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. Now they all wear them all the time, and they are the most outlandish, ridiculous looking things. So enough's enough. All right. Disclosure Day. Let's talk about this movie. So, to give you full disclosure, I've always been a big fan of sci-fi. Going all the way back to the 1980s. As a kid, I loved sci-fi. From Star Wars to lesser known sci-fi movies now, which came out in the 80s, like Flight of the Navigator, Batteries Not Included, Blade Runner, Alien, of course, the first two movies. The second one came out in the, was it mid-80s or late 80s? The first one came out actually in the late 70s. And then moving all the way through the 90s, you had movies like Event Horizon, The Matrix films. I've always been a massive fan of sci-fi, okay? And I've always been a fan of Steven Spielberg's sci-fi. Close Encounters, incredible movie. E.T., okay, it's a bit of a kid's film, but still I enjoyed it as a kid. Jurassic Park is sci-fi. And up until he did AI, which was okay-ish. Not a massive fan of that movie. But I really liked Minority Report. For me, that was one of Steven Spielberg's more underrated movies. I hope I didn't say Stephen King. Steven Spielberg's more underrated films. So when I heard that he was coming out with this Disclosure Day, I checked out the Short Circuit. Big up Coppen. Yeah, Short Circuit. That was another sci-fi classic from back in the 80s. Little Jacob says, if Umar Johnson hasn't got a problem with it, who am I to complain? Umar Johnson does have a problem with it. He's always complaining about it. He's always saying that women shouldn't actually come and meet him if they got weaves on. All natural only. We don't do the weaves. Anyway, so I was always a massive fan of sci-fi, including Spielberg sci-fi. So when I heard that this movie was coming out, Disclosure Day, and I've always liked alien movies, by the way, UFOs and all that kind of stuff. I've always liked those kind of sci-fi films. So when I heard this one was coming out, I checked out the trailer. The trailer looked fairly interesting. It didn't blow me away or anything. It looked fairly interesting. And then the movie came out and it was getting good reviews. There was somebody that turned up in the live chat on one of my recent streams that was saying it was really good. So I had high hopes. I went to the cinema yesterday to watch it. And I have to say, folks, this film was unbelievably boring. Steven Spielberg fell off years ago. And this was not a return to form. This film was completely devoid of the gravitas, the sense of wonder, and the iconic scores and the excellent pacing that Spielberg films used to have, the Spielberg films of old. So this was nothing like a return to form for Steven Spielberg. It was a bloated movie, and Steven Spielberg has made plenty of long movies, but this movie didn't justify its running time. It's something like 2.5 hours long. I was bored throughout long stretches of this film. It starts very slowly. I thought the casting was poor. The acting performances, for the most part, were just very, very generic and just uninspired. The only acting performance and the only character that was even the slightest bit interesting was the one played by Emily Blunt, who's the star of the movie. Everyone else was just like filler, you know? No, none of them were interesting. None of them were put on any kind of captivating performance. A very, very boring movie. Even the concepts that they explored in the movie have been explored 1,000 other times in other movies and done much better. In a film like this, you want to grip the audience from early on. You want there to be some intrigue, you know? Some mystery, some tension. There was no tension in the movie. I'm not a fan of action movies, but the only parts of this film that I actually enjoyed were the action sequences. When I say enjoyed, I didn't really enjoy them. They're just the only parts of the movie where I wasn't bored out of my mind. Honestly, this movie was so boring. It's nothing like the Spielberg classics of old at all. Somebody just mentioned Contact there. Contact was a great film. Great film. Event Horizon was a great film. There was another one which was about aliens, which was a really good film. Was it called The Taken or something, or Taken? It's one where these aliens can literally snatch you up off the earth with some kind of invisible force. I think it might be called Taken. That's a really good film. A really good alien movie. This was not. This movie was just so bloated. Steven Spielberg used to be able to do wonderment very well. Again, great examples of that would be Jurassic Park and Close Encounters. There was a tremendous sense of wonder in those movies and gravitas. None of that was here in this movie. Disclosure, nothing. The score was terrible. It has no semblance of a memorable score that builds towards anything. I mean, just a very, very disappointing film, honestly. Somebody said that it reminded them of the X-Files. Well, I don't know which X-Files you've seen, bro, because this was nothing like the X-Files. This was nothing like the X-Files. Compared to the X-Files, this was trash. Shout out to Andrew for the super chat. He says, Disclosure Day felt like a film you watched as a kid and was mesmerized. Today it felt so stale, like a Sunday TV film. Steven Spielberg hasn't evolved at all. Been left in the dust. Big up Andrew for the super chat. Gaz says The Mothman Prophecies was a real interesting one. Another great film. Matt Borgerson says, I would have preferred watching an Adam Scott film. Yeah, I mean, I think most, shout out to Jake Jones, I think most directors get burned out. I've said this many times before, but creativity tends to diminish as you reach old age. Whether you're a musician, a painter, or even a movie director. Once you reach past a certain age, it's like your creativity, your creative juices have been completely depleted. And you can't produce anything good anymore. You're not inspired to do anything good anymore. I mean, just look at Martin Scorsese. He don't make good movies anymore. And he used to be the man. So, yeah, I just think Spielberg is washed, and he's been washed for years. And it just tends to happen as directors get old. But yeah, Mothman Prophecies was a good movie. I think they did a real good job with that film. It's nowhere near as comprehensive as the book, but yeah, it's still a good movie. They adapted the book very well, because trying to make a movie out of the book is a hard task, because there's so much in the book and it's such a convoluted web. The fact they managed to simplify it and adapt it for the audience, you know, for a movie audience so well was impressive. Yeah, the movie's quite good. Arrival was a great Alien movie. That's correct. Shout out to Glum Coyote. He says, Empire of the Sun is superb. Now, there's an Alien movie that I saw on Amazon Prime a couple of years ago, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. It's a pretty low-budget Alien movie, but it's about a guy who is down on his luck. I'm struggling to remember the whole story, the whole plot, but it's a guy in America who's down on his luck. And somehow he starts seeing weird things, having encounters with aliens and men in black and stuff like that in his local town. I wish I could watch that movie again. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was a really quite creepy alien movie. In the end, he has this big encounter with the alien. God, I can't remember the name of that film, but it was actually a really good low-budget alien movie. A really, really good movie. And that movie must have had a budget no more than 1/20th or 1/40th the size of Disclosure Day, and it was a million times better. Honestly, Disclosure Day, so boring. Signs is another great movie. Yes. Fantastic movie, Signs. Great film. Big up McNoctus. Is it McNoctus or MC Noctus? Andrew says the aliens were the most generic looking aliens you'll ever see. I mean, the only thing that makes Disclosure Day a little bit interesting is the fact that they've got all this stuff about UAPs all over the media now, and you got jokers like Neil deGrasse Tyson all of a sudden doing a complete 180. He used to mock aliens and UFOs before, and now he's like, oh, well, maybe the aliens are here, and maybe... What are they up to? What are they prepping us for? With all these mainstream people all of a sudden being open to aliens and UFOs, you know? Before, they would all dismiss it as tinfoil stuff, but now they're like, oh, no, it's real. What are they up to? They Live, that's a classic, of course. Okay, so it's supposed to just be Noctus. Fair play. Am I a fan of Korean movies? Not really. I liked the first season of Squid Game. It's a Korean series, obviously, not a movie. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, I don't know what was worse, Disclosure Day or Hokum. Big up D-Man, he says, like Sick Boys Theory and Train Spotting, one day you have it, then you don't. Goes with boxers, directors, and musicians. Yes. With boxers, it's a bit different because it's more to do with the physical. With directors and musicians, it's the creative juices. Pause. I wish for the life of me I could remember that relatively low budget alien movie that I watched a few years ago on Amazon Prime. I can't remember the name of it. But it was a really, really good film. It was one of the most interesting depictions of Men in Black that I've seen in a movie. They were really creepy and they were doing weird stuff, and yeah, I wish I could remember the name of that film. D-Man says, I thought Holcomb was great, well written. I haven't seen Holcomb. Indeed, Andrew. Andrew says, the trailer sold me dreams. I was expecting an epic. Yeah, I wasn't completely sold on the trailer. The trailer was, interesting. But here's the truth. The trailer's actually better than the movie. I swear down. The trailer for Disclosure Day is better than the movie. Disclosure Day is probably it's probably more enjoyable to talk about Disclosure Day than to actually watch it. And talking about it is not even that interesting, but it's more interesting than watching it. Andrew says District 9 was very good. Yeah, I never liked District 9. I'm not saying it wasn't a good movie, but sometimes the tone of a movie just doesn't really work for me personally. It's like recently there was that movie that came out with Ryan Gosling to rave reviews, a sci-fi movie, and I tried watching it and just the whole tone of the movie just was not for me. I was expecting like a serious sci-fi movie, and instead it's kind of like silly space comedy or something. I was like, nah, bro, I can't do this. Alien Code, that might be the one. Let me just check it out. 1 second. Was it called Alien Code? Is that the one? Yes. Thank you. Big up Copezilla. Alien Code, that's the one. Alien. Dark Skies is a really good movie too. That's creepy. Ho ho ho. Dark Skies. If anyone wants to see a creepy alien movie, Dark Skies is the one. That's a great film. But Alien Code, yes. Alien Code. What was the budget on Alien Code? It's quite a low budget film. And it doesn't have a good review rating, by the way. But I'm just telling you, that's a good little movie. Came out in 2018. Let me see the budget. I'm looking at the review scores. They're all like 5s and 6s. Doesn't have a Wikipedia page. That's how small the movie is. It doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. Wow. So the budget for Alien Code was under $1 million. Yo, I didn't realize the budget was that small. So that's ultra low budget by today's standards. Under $1 million. Alien Code. Super duper low budget. But I enjoyed that movie 10 times more than Disclosure Day. Disclosure Day, I think, was like a $200 million movie. So the budget 200 times the size of Alien Code, but Alien Code way more enjoyable. But Dark Skies is a great film. The Fourth Kind, yeah, I remember that when that movie came out. I liked that movie when it came out, but it hasn't aged as well because that filmmaking style is no longer popular these days. The filmmaking style was kicked off really, or that filmmaking style was really kicked off by the Blair Witch Project. That whole concept of lost footage that was recovered, and then they're, looking through all this shaky camcorder footage. This is back in the analog days, and it reveals this scary story. And that's what they did with Paranormal Activity, and that's what they did with The Fourth Kind. So it was part of that kind of style of movie, which is based on shaky camcorder lost footage. So The Fourth Kind doesn't really hold up that well these days because that style of movie is kind of antiquated now. Doesn't really work in this current age. But Dark Skies works very well still. Funny G says, have you seen Super 8? I haven't seen Super 8. What is that? I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. Is it an alien movie? Yeah, the ending to Dark Skies is mad. And I like what's the name of the actor who plays Peter Parker's boss in Spider-Man? Because he plays this like UFO alien expert in Dark Skies. And he's really good in it. And yeah, not to spoil it for anyone, but at the end of Dark Skies, yeah, it's a mad ending. Very well done movie. Very creepy. Mr. Beaning says, have you seen an alien movie called Annihilation? I don't think so. And Me Too, Striker. I also hated Blair Witch Project. People were saying it was so frightening. I never found it the least bit frightening. I was like, what the hell is this? What a con job. They've managed to put this film out and it's the new, amazing horror movie. I thought it was absolute garbage. Mr. Beaning says, Blair Witch terrified me when I was young. I thought he was real. It didn't scare me even one iota. I thought it was absolutely dreadful. I remember watching Blair Witch, and the whole time I was like, when do we see the witch? Just at least a hint of the witch. Nothing. Just a bunch of, teenagers or early 20s, middle-class white American kids running around in the woods, screaming and making silly noises. And that's it. I was like, man, is this what people have been frightened about? Like, this is trash. Avenue says, wasn't it based on true footage found? No. That was all just like BS that they made up to promote the movie. They used to do that a lot. Because they did the same with The Fourth Kind. With The Fourth Kind, they said, oh, this is based on real events and this, that, and the other. I think it might have been loosely based on a couple of sightings or, very, very, very loosely based on real events, the fourth kind. Most of it was all made up. But they put that at the beginning of the movie in the fourth kind, right? They make it look like it was based on these real events, and they put footage in to make it look like this is the real woman who it happened to, and then this is the actor, this is the reconstruction. But the fourth kind was good, though. Way better than Blair Witch. Funny G says, I saw Blair Witch with my 80-year-old grandma. I thought it was real, but I was like 12. Yeah, when I saw Blair Witch, how old would how old would I have been then? When did the Blair Witch Project come out? I was an adult by that time. Blair Witch Project came out in 1999. Yeah, so I was an adult by that point. And as an adult, I was like, this is trash. Where's the damn witch? Just a bunch of teenagers running around in the woods, sniveling, snot dripping out of the nose and making silly noises and throwing a bunch of cow intestines around and making it look like someone was gutted. It's just, nah, bro. I've heard that Backrooms is decent. Shout out to Adam Fawkes for the super chat. He says, which fight had the most worldwide attention in the lead up in the time you've been watching boxing? Unfortunately, probably Mayweather Pacquiao. And I say that because of social media and all that kind of thing, the numbers it did, or maybe even Mayweather McGregor, one of those fights. Which, for me, were never fights I was interested in at the time they happened. If you go back to the early 2000s or the 90s, believe it or not, Mike Tyson, Peter McNeely had a lot of interest because Mike Tyson coming out of prison was an enormous story. It's something people have been waiting for. It's something people have been praying for. Because the narrative at the time is that the heavyweight division needed saving. That it was in a terrible state. That the fighters that were around at the time were terrible, were awful. This was the narrative. And Mike Tyson was going to come out of prison and clean it all up. So when he fought Peter McNeely, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal. The Holyfield rematch was a big deal. I mean, the first Holyfield fight was a big deal, but more so the rematch because of what happened in the first fight. And yeah, you had the Lewis Holyfield fights, but neither Lewis or Holyfield really had a massive fan base compared to Mike Tyson, for example. Lewis Tyson was a big deal, but again, Tyson was washed. And there was a certain number of people that knew he was washed. I'm talking about the general public. So yeah, if you're talking about numbers, metrics, you'd have to say like Mayweather Pacquiao, Mayweather McGregor, one of those fights. Colbzilla says Backrooms is boring. Okay. Did I watch the Blair Witch remake? No, I didn't. I watched Blair Witch 2. I actually thought, and Blair Witch 2 was panned by the critics, by the way. Blair Witch 1 was celebrated and lauded by the critics. Blair Witch 2 was panned, and I thought Blair Witch 2 was better. Not that Blair Witch 2 was an amazing movie, it weren't, but I thought it was more watchable than the first one. The first one I was just bored out of my mind. Like, what is this? When do we actually see a witch or anything remotely supernatural? Do I rate James Cameron as a director? He's pretty good. He's not one of my favorite directors, but he's pretty good. I mean, the Terminator movies, the first two Terminator movies were classics. Aliens was also a classic. Did he also direct The Abyss? I wasn't a big fan of that movie. The CG for the time was groundbreaking, but, you know, weren't really a big fan. I liked the first Avatar movie, but the second and the third were trash. And apparently there's going to be a fourth. Oh dear. Rich Franklin says, I'm going to give this movie a miss. Yeah, I would recommend you do give it a miss. Wait for it to come on streaming platforms or something instead and save your money, because it ain't worth it, bro. I thought the Michael Jackson movie was way more enjoyable than this. Again, two totally different genres. But you either enjoy a film or you don't. And the Michael Jackson movie was way more enjoyable than Disclosure Day. Disclosure Day was just so boring. The movie just had no heart to it. No gravitas, no heart. It wasn't particularly interesting. None of the performances, other than, Emily Blunt's performance was decent, but it wasn't like an Oscar-worthy performance. It was just, decent performance. But all the supporting cast were just the most generic. I mean, there's that black guy who is often, he was actually in the Michael Jackson movie as well. The black guy with the Spanish surname. What's he called again? He was also in a very good TV series called The Madness. A limited series called The Madness. That's really good. What's the name of the black guy that plays Michael Jackson's dad in the movie? And he's also in Disclosure Day. Got some Spanish surname. Anyone? No? Okay, Cophead says no idea. Let me look it up. Okay, Coleman Domingo. Coleman Domingo. So Coleman Domingo is in The Madness, which is a really good TV series. It's on Netflix. And he's in the Michael Jackson movie, and he was also in Disclosure Day. Now, he's normally a good, puts on a good performance, but maybe he just didn't have the type of script or material to work with or whatever it was. Even his performance was very flat in Disclosure Day. Everyone was flat other than Emily Blunt, who was just decent. Cobzilla said, I didn't know Joe Jackson and Don King were doing deals. Me neither. That's actually one of the things I discovered in the Michael Jackson movie. I think at some point I'd heard someone mention it because I kind of jogged my memory slightly. So I'd maybe heard it in passing years ago that Don King and Joe Jackson were in business. But I didn't realize the extent of it. That was it the Triumph Tour or the Victory Tour? One of those tours, the one where Michael Jackson got his scalp burnt. Don King actually put that tour together and promoted that tour with the Jackson 5. Spaceballs. Is that the Spaceballs remake or the original? The original Spaceballs was a little cult classic. It was a cult classic with like New York Jewish humor. Leaning very heavily on New York Jewish humor. Rick Moranis was in it. He's obviously a Jewish guy. And you had that character that was a send-up of Yoda. May the Schwartz be with you and all that. Someone says Knowing. Is that a film that I've seen? Okay, Nicolas Cage. I'm not sure I've seen that. The synopsis is: the film centers around the discovery of a strange paper filled with numbers and a possibility that they somehow predict the details of various disasters. Okay. All right, peeps. Gonna draw the curtain on this live stream. Big up everyone who joined the conversation. And a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were D-Man, Glom Coyote, GMS Nightmare, Gaz, Double A13, Cobzilla, Matt Borgerson, Andrew. I think I said Glom Coyote already, Matt Borgerson, D-Man, Adam Folks. Okay, so special shout out to you guys. And big up everyone, as I say, for joining the conversation. Until next time, take care out there. Be good. And I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.